Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much for the organisers for running this. And yeah, as Michael says, I've been involved in teaching online for about the last 15 years and have spent the last few years helping to train other people to teach and to work online. As other people have said already today and yesterday, teaching online, it's quite important to have that background of recorded material that is both accessible for students with disabilities, but also for those that can't be there live. So we need to have that core material that's accessible at all times. But there also needs to be something else. Like John said, you need something to encourage students to interact. We need something to get the students to want to come as well. So there's lots of background and scholarship already done about students interacting in tutorials. Face-to-face, it's really easy. Online, it tends to be a little bit harder. You've got to take a few more risks, actually really plan what you want to do. A couple of years ago, I ran a lot of workshops with other Open University staff members. And we talked a lot about how to get students to interact online. These are some of their ideas that they raised. I want to pick out a few key points. I think one of the main things about getting students to interact is it does benefit those students that are attending over those that are listening to recordings. Like I said, you do need that core recorded material that's accessible, that is there, and students can go back to again and again to review. But equally, you need some reason for actually a student to actually bother logging on and actually attending something live. And if it's just you talking to the screen, well, why would they bother to do that? They need to have some reason to actually come and attend. Another reason why you want students to interact is you actually want to know they're there and awake. I'm sure, as you appreciate now, as you're chatting to screens more than people, unless you're actually getting something back from them, you don't even know if they're there anymore. I sometimes imagine my students are sat there with a glass of wine watching Coronation Street in the background or something and not actually paying any attention to what I'm saying. The interaction also gives the feedback on student understanding. Probably even more important in today's society now, it can reduce that isolation of students. It can remind them that there is community learners there, and it does improve their satisfaction. So, like I said, a couple of years ago, we actually changed our online tuition service. So at that point, we had a load of activities that we've used a lot in maths and stats for interaction with students, but we thought it would be a really nice opportunity to see if there were more things out there that we could be doing. And so I ran a load of workshops at some cross-faculty staff events in various parts of the country. Same session plan in each of the sections. Why do you want the students to interact? So that was information I shared just previously. Talked about some examples of simple interactivity that we do in mathematics, and then let them just chat really about what they do in their own faculties and in their own lectures and in their own online tutorials about what they do to get students to actually interact with them. Right, so most simple ideas for interactions that are available on most online platforms. There's generally some form of chat and comment box, and we do seem to find that students do like to use these most often, and it feels quite easy and it's something they're used to doing all the time. Polling is a brilliant thing to use. You can assess students' knowledge. You can use some of your stat questions or something like that. So you can talk about a topic and then run a quick question, just either a multiple choice question, and just see if the students are actually getting the right answer or not. And if they are, then you can move on. If not, it's maybe something you need to go back and revisit again. Emoticons, brilliant. Can you hear me? Am I funny? Are you agreeing with what I'm doing? Do I need to speak louder? Do I need to speak softer? Do you need to get my attention? Things also, again, that students are really happy to use. We use quite a lot of drag and drop activities as well. We call drag and drop activities, it's things where students actually move various things across the screen. Again, used as a good guide, a really quick gauge of students' understanding throughout a presentation. Writing on screen, most students only really have the ability of a mouse or something like that, so that's limited to what you can do. But often you can do it for things like circling the right answers, linking, connecting theorems together, that sort of thing. Talking. Now this one I always feels a bit like playing chicken, really, because there's nothing worse than dead time in an online environment. And so, but what you tend to find is if you ask the students a question and you're expecting them to respond verbally, you just have to wait. And eventually, if you can hold on long enough, someone will break that silence and someone will answer the question. You've just got to hold on and make sure it's not you. And then obviously you can move students out into breakout rooms and put them into smaller groups and get them to try and actually communicate together and discuss ideas and thoughts and just chat, really. Right, so during these sessions, we had lots of different tutors from lots of different faculties together. And so on top of those simple basic ideas, I thought I'd share some ones that are slightly more out of the box that you might want to use. Right, so this one came from a history lecture. And basically it's just a very simple thing. Set up a poll at the beginning of the lecture, tutorial section, and just try and gain what the student's understanding is to start with. Give your best effort to describe and to pass on your mathematical concept, and then ask them at the end if they understand any more of it. Hopefully the understanding will have increased, but if it's decreased, then yeah, you need to try something else. But yeah, this historian used to use it. Why the French Revolution started was one of the ones that he used to use it for. But yeah, easily be used for any mathematical idea or concept. Watching a video. Languages use it a lot because I'll have two people speaking in a different language and I'll stop them. What should the other person say next? You can do it for mathematical problems though. Rather than you actually sitting and going through a problem and writing it out by hand or having a PowerPoint or something, you can have a video already made that does that same problem. And then you can say, you know, you can pause the video. What's the next step? Even better, you can actually build in some mistakes into your problem, and then you can ask the students where you've gone wrong. The good thing about doing it as a video rather than yourself when you're doing it is certainly if you're going to do where have I gone wrong, they're less likely to criticize you if they think you're actually doing it right. So if you're showing a video, then it's less personal. It's not like they're actually trying to criticize yourself. What else have we got? Yeah, English literature looked at getting students learning how to write an essay, how the essays are broken down into different sections. Again, we can do this a lot with mathematical solutions. And it's a really good way of getting students to try and interact together in smaller groups. You can put them into the breakout rooms. They can do lots of different things. So, yeah, right. So, and this one came from computing, very similar to the English lecturer sort of thing, but maybe actually more, rather than looking at an essay that's already done, this one was actually trying to get the students to write some programming code. Again, we can do it for things like mathematical proofs, calculations with several parts, break out the students. All of these activities are aimed at trying to get the students to communicate with each other in some way and work together and actually discuss mathematics, because I think that's the thing that happens online, is the actual ability to discuss mathematics is taken away from the students a lot more, and it's a lot easier for them to sit and be passive and just listen to what you're saying. Also did pick up some ideas from some maths and stats lecturers in these workshops. So critique of a mathematical solution, like I said, these are the sorts of things you can use if students can draw on the screen, because it's very simple mouse drawing. They can draw ellipses or very bad arrows to say point where the errors are and things like that. When you're doing this sort of thing, it is really happy to check that all the students are happy to participate and that they're happy to go on. And hypothesis testing for statistics, just making sure that the students understand exactly what the hypotheses are. One of the advantages you can do of polling is that quite often you can hide the poll from other students, so the students that are in the room can't see what the other students are answering, and so that they can't copy each other, and you can really gauge the understanding of each of the students individually. There you go. So, so what have I learnt? I think one of the key things I've learned is, while we need to have those recordings, we also need to make sure there's a benefit to attending a tutorial. I spent quite a lot of time in the last year trying to look at different ways of increasing our tutorial attendance. And so if we're going to try and increase our attendance, then we need to make sure there's a benefit for the students that are attending, although there is still that core material that's recorded and is available for students offline at all times. And one thing you can do is, if you're recording a whole session, you can actually pause it at the points you're going to get students to interact, so that the student that's watching the recording back again doesn't get any dead space or anything. Although I'm doing it at the moment, really trying to avoid death by PowerPoint, students just turn off. One of the other things that getting students to interact to is it gives yourself a rest. I'm sure as you're lecturing now online, you can also all appreciate that it's a lot harder to lecture online than it is to do it face to face. And so if you give the students something to do, then it gives you a chance to have a slug of your tea and a breather. You're not going to cover as much material as I would do, or I can't cover as much material as I would normally do in a face-to-face lecture online. You need to try and build in some running feedback that replaces that eye contact that you've lost online. You really want to make sure that the students are keeping up, because normally on a standard lecture, you turn around, you look at them and you realise you've lost them. You don't have that same ability now. It's just a load of names on a list or people. So you need to get that running feedback. So a good thing to do is to build in very quick questions just to make sure the students are understanding what you're doing. So maybe just testing a certain aspect of something you've talked about or something like that. That's where poll pods and chat boxes come in really useful, because you can just get that quick, simple, very immediate feedback that says they still know what you're talking about. One of the things that I think is getting even more important, again, certainly in the world we seem to be living in nowadays, is you want to do something that's going to build in that community. It's going to get students discussing the topic as well as teaching them. We need to try and recreate that situation of the corridors that students were talking and the coffee shops where they go and discuss what they didn't understand in the lecture. We need to make sure that we're getting those situations built back into our online teaching as much as we can do. And share ideas across faculties. One of the best things that happened at these workshops I ran is that one of the lecturers was talking across the room about one of the things that she uses in her online teaching, and someone across the other side of the room said, "That gives him an amazing idea." I have no idea to this day what that idea was, but just that idea, that ability to bounce ideas off of other people and to go, "Oh yeah, I can see what you've done there. I can use it in my teaching this way." Give things a try. You have to be more creative teaching online. And thank you very much. Any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Sue. There are a few questions coming in. I'm going to try and kind of merge, if I may, some of them together. But Sally B has asked about sort of drag and drop, and a couple of other people have asked the sort of same as well. So kind of, what software did you use for the drag and drop how does it work? For example, can students do it individually, or is it one screen? How does that work? Say a bit more about your experience?
Yeah, we used to use it. We used to use it on OU Live, which was done by Blackboard Collaborate. So I would imagine that certainly Blackboard has the same functions. And it's really, if the students have any drawing functions, then quite often you can create something that a student can then click on and move it across the screen. So for example, we have a PowerPoint screen and we can overlay items on top of it, and then the students can move those. When we were using a Blackboard Collaborate type system, then they could actually all be built into the presentations and they were movable by students. Yeah, I mean, drag and drop, it's just, yeah, we call it drag and drop because then students can move the things, but equally, if you can't use drag and drop, you can get students to put ticks and crosses against questions that are up. We tend to, yeah, ticks and crosses are the things we drag and drop most because they're easy to grab and they're quite easy to follow. But they are available in quite a lot of the packages, so.
Thanks, Sue. There's another question here from Margaret Messmer in Leeds, which is about your use of the ticks and crosses. Perhaps a number of quite specific things about things that you've tried and how they're working. I'm now just trying to find the exact question itself. So Margaret says that it looks very useful. Do you know if that's kind of available on other platforms as well, or how colleagues might adapt to use it, for example?
Yeah, like I said, I know it has been available on other platforms. I honestly don't know if it's available on Zoom or Big Blue Button and things like that. But yeah, if there is, like I said, the ability to adapt it is yeah, if students have any access to drawing, then they can do it, or you, instead of using drag and drop, you can go through questions in time and get students to chat into the chat box, or to use an emoticon as to whether they think it's right or wrong, that sort of thing. It's just these little tiny interactions, just trying to get each student to do something themselves, just to engage them, to bring them back into that online room. I think is the important thing, because it's so easy when you're attending lectures and meetings online just to suddenly just to lose concentration, really. And so anything we can do that just builds that student's attention back into what you're doing, and yeah, get some paying your attention again, and learning, really, and thinking about the maths, really. Sorry, I didn't know it's another question I was scanning through. Someone asked about peer interaction, and whether peer review activities. We don't tend to do peer review activities because I think it adds to that student's fear of being wrong and the maths anxiety that a lot of students do suffer from. But what we do a lot of is I make mistakes. I'd like to say always deliberately. I quite often make mistakes. Some of them are deliberate. So I think it's important to show that students, you do make mistakes. We do kind of anonymous peer review activities. So yeah, we will put up a solution that has errors and ask students to find the error, rather than asking students to critique each other. Sorry, would you want me to answer any other questions, Michael?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just sort of trying to multitask. And I spotted a comment in the chat that Audrey tells us that ticks and crosses is apparently available on Zoom. So I think I've kind of learned something from that. So, there's lots of people kind of kicking around advice as well in the chat about where these things are available. So do, if you're interested, kind of have a look at that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think the final sort of question that I will ask, and then Sue, if you wouldn't mind sort of tapping out a few responses to other questions that are there.
Yeah,
is
not a problem.
From Nikesh Solanki, which says, can you say anything about how effective maths lecturers have found the activities that you've suggested?
How effective maths? I think, yeah, we. I think it boils down to, again, how brave you are as a maths lecturer. I have many lecturers that will ensure their students interact, and the students that then come to their lecturers really get used to it and they get a lot out of it. It's that chicken thing again. How good are you at playing chicken? As a mathematician, we're very hesitant to put ourselves out there, and that's so that the activities you use, that are anonymous, that students can do without other students seeing that they've done it. They are ones that work really well. So if you can use polling activities or private chats, because you can have a chat box where a lot of the platforms will allow you to have a chat box that only the moderators can see the answers. And so you could have a chat box open like that, and that's the chat box you could ask students to type in their answers to for questions. So that way, no other student seeing the answer you've got. Anything like that is really good. Getting students to talk is always a lot harder, but students would talk if they are face to face, and yeah, you have to persevere, and you can get them to talk if you want to. Generally, they will only talk when the recordings are switched off, and so you need to tell them the recording's switched off. We run a lot of between module support, and there can be 300 students in the room, and you won't have a word for the whole time that you're recording the session, and you switch the session off, and you will get question after question after question at that point from students that the minute they know that anything they say isn't going to be recorded for prosperity, will actually start talking. But yeah, it's trial and error and pushing and keeping on going, and yeah, trying to recreate what the students had when they were sat next to each other.
Brilliant. Thank you again, Sue. I think that session was fantastic in terms of so many kind of tips and ideas to share. I'm going to kind of steal some of your words that I really kind of liked, which was when you said, about the sort of the silence, but the opportunity for what was it, a slug of tea and a breather. And I think that kind of summarizes perhaps where we are in the program at the moment. So we'll take the short break there. We'll kind of reconvene back at 22 when we kick off with the session with Tim and Christian. But if we all take Sue's advice and have a slug of tea and a quick breather for 10 minutes or so.